Hello, and welcome back to another episode for the Project Seed Money podcast. My name is Sharissa Bradley, and I am so excited to be joined today with guest author Shamayne Kotfas. Thank you so much for being here and spending a little time with me today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I was looking forward to this all through the holidays, and I'm glad that we are here today.
Oh, absolutely, me too. I just want to jump right in and ask, have you always wanted to be an author?
No, that's an easy question. No, I didn't think about being an author. And when that came up that I might become an author because I needed to tell my story, I still didn't think I could do it. And I put it off for a really long time until I had enough people finally ask me, when is your book coming out? I want to know your story. And the reason they knew that is because I was teaching a workshop based on a journey that I had gone through to transform myself into the person I am today. And they wanted to know the full story. So that prompted me to go ahead and start taking some of my journal entries and things like that and trying to compile a book. But it took a very long time, and I wanted to give up so many times.
I find that many authors are going to be able to relate to that because we all kind of get in that path of like, okay, I'm doing the work, but do I want to? And what have I gotten myself into? So I wonder once you had that moment of like, people are now asking for your story. So there's this interest. And so it was time to write it. What publishing path did you then choose from that point? Were you writing and then querying, or did you know that you would self-publish, or what was your publishing journey like?
Oh, sure. It was really just a way, it was just taking one step at a time because I had no plan. I never even wondered if I would get published. I just assumed if it's going to happen, it will happen. So I'm kind of one of those that was just kind of afraid to do it. But once I got used to the idea and once I started seeing the progress I was making as I was writing, and I would look back and see where I had come by that time, I started thinking, well, I need to get to know the business a little better. And so one of the first things I did was join the Women in Publishing and that summit. And I still continue, this will be my fourth summit this year, but I still continue to go because the speakers and everyone that I chose to listen to during those summits were helping me with each step of my writing journey. So the first, summit, I was interested in, okay, well, how do you start a book and how do you lay it out and create the theme and all that? So I was taking those kinds of classes. I don't guess they're not classes, but speakers. I was listening to those types of speakers that could help me make that progress. And then the next year I was getting closer to the editing part. So I was doing things like that. So I was always looking for the next step and the next piece that I needed to put into the puzzle in order to get to the final goal of having a book.
That is so
And
cool.
you asked which direction I ended up going for publishing or for writing. I ended up going with a boutique publisher, but I also have a workbook and I self-published that. So, but I had to learn all of these things as I went along. I didn't have the knowledge, but I was gaining the knowledge. And I also had a lot of people in my corner that I could call on. And I realized I couldn't do this on my own. If people do this on their own, they're superhuman because I don't know how they would do it. But I needed people in my corner and I needed them from each part of the writing process. I needed different people. I had a writing coach at one time. I had an editing coach at one time. So I just gathered those people and I brought them into my life at the times that I needed them.
Yeah. And I love the way that you brought up the Women in Publishing Summit as kind of this thing that each year you were able to focus on a different part of it. Because if you haven't already heard of the Women in Publishing Summit, they have almost like a tracks model where on one day at the beginning of the day, or even actually at all times a day, depending on where you are as an author, if you're in your writing stage or editing stage or the marketing stage, there's almost like these tracks that every hour you can listen to a speaker who's an expert in that area. So it becomes a massive tool that I myself use. I'll be coming for the second year this year. And I absolutely love that you can learn kind of all of the ins and outs of the publishing
Yep.
industry. And you don't have to do it all in one year. I like that you said that. Like maybe one year it's focusing on writing, and then the
Yeah.
next year is the editing piece. I love that. And then this year, maybe you'll be focusing more on like the marketing side of it.
Right. And I've done a few in the marketing last year. But yes, exactly. And then also there's that networking piece in there where you can talk to other people. But it also, listening to those speakers really helps you understand that you're not the only one struggling through this process. I commend those who are able to write several books in a year, or however they are in, they've got these series and all this. I commend them and I admire them for that. But me, I was just one person wanting to write one book, and ended up writing a workbook with it. And then I may even do a children's book based on the topic. But when I started, it was simply, how do I do this? I don't know. And it was such a great grounding for me. It was such a great place to start. And it continues to support my journey while I go ahead and do the other things I can do on my own.
I absolutely love that. And I love the community element of it because it is kind of like this solitary thing that we do to write. But that's really the only thing we have to do by
Mm,
ourselves. Everything else
mhm.
you can join in community. And even you can do other things like with writing people with people too. Like I've heard of writing groups where they all jump in at the same hour every day, but they keep their camera off and they just write at the same time. So even that can be made into
Yeah.
like practice where people are together. I love the community element of it. I wonder if while you were going through the process of writing this book and then the subsequent workbook, did you face any self-doubt?
Oh my gosh, yes. Self-doubt was probably the biggest factor in holding me back. Even though I had all this support and I had people reminding me that I had a message and I had a story that was important for people to hear, I couldn't get around the self-doubt. And part of that, I think, had to do with the fact that I would get to a place in the writing that I didn't know how to move forward. I would get stuck. And that's when the self-doubt would creep in and say, well, maybe you're not meant to do this. Maybe this just isn't for you, that kind of thing. What if people, and then the what ifs come in. What if people don't like your writing, or they think you can't write, or you don't have the right words? I remember, it's funny to look back, especially when it takes as long as it took me. When I went back after years of just continuously writing and working with different people to get to a manuscript, and then I started going back through the editing process, I was like, oh my gosh, I can tell this was when I first started writing. This doesn't sound like me at all. I was trying to be so eloquent and proper in my writing, to make sure I had all, all the right words and the grammar and the punctuation and all that. And so I went back, and when I was rereading it, I really could tell how I progressed in my writing.
Yeah.
And I ended up at the place where I wanted to be and should be because it's my own voice. But I always had problem with understanding what people meant, find your voice.
Yeah.
And I really had no way of understanding what that actually meant until I found my voice. And simply it was just like talking to me. I was reading it and I'm having a conversation with myself, just talking the same way I would talk to anyone else. But that took time. And yes, so the self-doubt was there off and on all throughout the process, all throughout the
Yeah.
process.
I think that's pretty natural. And I think that most authors will relate to that. I wonder if while you were facing this self-doubt, because your book is now like it's in the publisher's hands, like the workbook is out. I
Mhm.
wonder if you've developed any tools that help you combat that self-doubt.
Um, I think the main thing for me was just to be comfortable with who I am and with what I was writing about. And then, was constant reminders to myself. You're doing this, look how far you've come, just constantly, and celebrating those little victories. If I got to the end of a chapter, or I got, whatever little victories I had, I would definitely recognize those and take and just pat myself on the back. And the further in the process I got, the more I realized, oh my gosh, you're actually doing this, and you should be proud. No, not everybody writes a book, and or more, and so it became an idea that I was actually doing something for myself. I was doing it for myself and not for anyone else. And that kind of helped the self doubt go away. And then this is kind of a silly thing, but people talk about having your own writing place, having a spot where you write. And I didn't set a schedule. I didn't have a certain time because I was working a full-time job at this time. But when I had moments, I would break and write. And now I have more time. But the thing that got me was that people talked about sitting in a comfy chair or at their desk or, having a candle, whatever. They had all these elaborate ways of writing. And where my comfort space was on my bed.
Yeah.
I love to just go in my room where it was quiet, sit on my bed with my laptop and my little lap desk, and that's where it all happened for me. And I would feel kind of guilty because I'd be sitting on my bed a lot. And then I saw Barbara Streisand interview about her book that came out a couple of years ago, and that was her spot. She said, I love to sit on my bed. That is my favorite place. And so once I heard her say that, I thought, well, then I don't feel so bad anymore.
That's such good advice because maybe maybe it is your bed. Maybe it's, I think about like I wrote a lot of my first book on my phone while I was waiting in school pickup line for my daughter. And because it was like a 30-minute wait. So I had like my notes app, and it wasn't necessarily where I felt comfortable, but it was where I could fit it in.
Yes, we take
So
those
that,
opportunities. Yes, we
yeah,
have to. I mean, the middle of the night, I got to where I kept my iPad right next to my bed. And in the middle of the night, when I would have an idea, I needed to type it out real quick. And it was much easier than trying to turn the light on and write. So I would, and I type anyway. So yeah, so I was doing that too. I was like, or if I had, like if I was in traffic and I had an idea, I would send myself a text or an email or something with just the idea. And that's, you're writing, then you're creating the storyline, you're creating the next thought, and having those and getting them sent to yourself just so you don't forget. Because I was so terrified of forgetting any ideas that I had coming to me.
I think that's also relatable because it just comes in and it's like, oh, I got to get this out right now. Back of receipts, wherever
Right,
it,
right, right.
however.
Sticky notes. I had them everywhere.
So, Shamayne, I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about your book.
Oh, sure, sure. So I mentioned a little bit about the fact that it was my journey of transformation, and everyone goes through some sort of transformation or growth or emotional change, usually in different parts of our lives. And this one that stuck out for me was midlife. It was around my 40s, and I went through just a whole lot of different changes through divorce and selling my house and losing my job and then having to start a new job. And then tragically, my first husband was also killed in an accident during this period of time. So it was a very rough period of time, but it also had me focusing and reflecting on who I was as a person. I'd always been a mother and a wife and a daughter, and all these things that I played a role in my family from growing up in a dysfunctional home with my parents, an alcoholic father and a mother in high control religion, things like that. There was just so much in my life that was just going on all the time. And about that midlife time, I started to say, let's step back and figure out who you are and figure out what you want your life to be about. And that started the journey, and it lasted for a good decade. And then I started getting some ideas about how to put together some of the strategies I had learned in growing emotionally and things like that. So the book is that journey. It's how I got to this place. The workbook is an offshoot of that book in that it lays out the steps that I took. And the beautiful thing about the steps that I took, I wanted to be able to talk to other women and teach them a guideline on how to do it for themselves. Because I've come across so many women who are asking those same questions of themselves and they don't know where to begin. And that's what I remember about my journey is I was like, I could read books about why I had turned out the way I had turned out. You know, there's repercussions from having an alcoholic parent and, you know, all these other things. So I could read books about why and what would be better, but nobody was telling me how to start it and how to do it. So I wanted to be able to do that for other women. I wanted to give them that opportunity to just give them a starting place and then they take it and run with it. And to be, I guess the run with it is kind of a good segue into what it's about because the steps came to me in a picture of a shoe. I had already, by this time, I had already taken these steps, but I didn't know what order I had done them. I didn't know what I had done specifically. I just knew that I was a better person. I was coming into my own, and I was beginning to feel very acceptable of who I was. But what did I do in those 10 years that made me start to feel this way? And that's when the shoe came, and it came in a dream. And I just had a dream that I had forgotten my shoes to go for a walk. And when I went back to get my shoes, I woke up and realized I was going to help women find their shoes for their journey. And the journey is the emotional journey. It's not a physical journey, but the shoe also aligns with our emotional needs the way it does to prepare you for a walk or a jog or a marathon. And so the shoe parts represent for me all the steps I took. And it began with really getting to know my soul. The soul is the foundation of the shoe, and it's the foundation of who we are. And so I go through all of those steps with the shoe, the sole, the arch is a support system. We talk about the toe, which guides us forward in a straight path, and learning to use your intuition and your wisdom that's already inside of you. That's the great thing about this whole journey for me, was that I realized everything I needed was already inside of me. People may have tried to take it away or tried to redefine it or tried to tell the story for me, but it was always within me. And I just had to learn how to do it for myself. And that's what I did. And then the shoe gave me the object that I could use in order to explain it to other women. And there's 8 steps. So I go through the whole shoe and talk about all those lessons I learned to live my best life, to just be the person I wanted to be, the person that I feel most comfortable in my shoes.
That is so beautiful, Shamayne. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I wonder if you could tell us where we'll be able to find your book, where we can find your workbook, and where we can find you online, social media, those sort of things.
Sure, sure. And I would love to hear from people or just if they get the book, I'd love to know how they feel. The workbook right now is available on Amazon and also on my website. It's Shoes That Fit Her Soul. And the book is sitting at my publisher's office. Like I'm imagining it sitting on the desk. It was supposed to be released already. So that will be coming very soon. And we're keeping that updated on my website. And one thing that I will have on my website is a digital format for my workbook.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah. So I invite people to check out my website, check out, where I'm going so far, and I'll be teaching workshops and things like that in the very near future.
Oh, that is so incredible. I just have one last question for you. I wonder if you have any last bit of advice for our audience. They are female listeners and they're on the fence about writing their first book, and they maybe just need that little bit of encouragement or support to just kind of help them on their journey.
Sure. Well, one, it's never too late. And if you have a story, we need to hear it. Okay. Because at a time when I was searching and I was listening to other people's stories, that helped me to continue my journey because I would hear other women's stories and something about one woman would touch my heart, another woman it's not just one person with one story that's going to tell you and it's going to resonate with you. You're going to pick up pieces from all sorts of people. So don't let that intimidate you. Don't think, well, my story is like everyone else's. It's not. It's your journey and it's your story. And you have lived it and you have done things within that journey that others may not have thought of or thought, but it could help someone else. And even if it's not about a personal journey or just a story to tell, I mean, we all have a story. And I think it's important that we share it, especially women. Especially women. We need more women telling their stories out there.
I couldn't agree more. I truly believe that that's what this platform is to help encourage more women to write and share their stories. I just want to say thank you again so much for spending a little bit of time with me, Shamayne. I'll make sure to have all of the descriptions
Sure.
in the link of this video and this podcast so that people can find you and your books easily. Thank you again.
Thank you.